I'm Mike Hurley. I'm Mayor of the City of Burnaby here in British Columbia. Been active mayor since November 5th last year. So a whole 3 months under my belt. 1988, I became a firefighter in Burnaby and worked my way up through the ranks from a rookie right up through lieutenant to being a captain. Finished my career as a captain with the Burnaby Fire Department. Well, the culture of firefighting was it's a man's world, and you better be ready to enter a man's world because, you're going to see things that, you better be able to deal with. And that was right, except that, you see a lot of things you're not able to deal with and that keep you awake at night and still keep me awake at night. Some of the things I saw during my time as firefighting. Having said that, I wouldn't change a thing. It's the most rewarding career that one can ever have. But you better understand going in that you're going to see some things that most people will never see. Suck it up, Buttercup. That's the way it is. And usually we'll go back to the hall and there'll be some, dry humor. And maybe if it was a day shift at night, everyone would go to the bar and have a few drinks, and that was how we dealt with things back then. Thankfully it's a lot different now. I'm originally from Northern Ireland. I grew up just outside of Belfast. Came to Vancouver in 1983. I was politically active to a point, but I was also a young male who was a musician, so that took me away from a lot of stuff. And I was also an avid athlete, so I had the good fortune of being taken away from the troubles in Northern Ireland a lot through my musicianship and being an athlete. So that took up most of my time. Well, it certainly sparked to, standing up for what you believe and having to not be scared to make a decision to go a certain road with your life, and also to ensure that you looked out for others. Because a lot of people in Northern Ireland went through a lot of hard times with their families losing members, losing good friends throughout the Troubles. So certainly it sparked a lot of trying to do the right thing and trying to look out for others. I would say that's what it really sparked in me. I can tell you that when 9/11 happened, I was on my way to London. I was actually in the air when 9/11 happened. And we arrived in London, and walking past the TV monitors on my way back home to Ireland with 4 other firefighters. And I looked at the screens, and I said, because I know the New York system, and I've been to New York many times with the fire department there, there's 300 firefighters in those buildings. And it was horrifying to watch that. So right away, I was able to get on the phone and phone some of my friends in New York and find out some of the details of what was going on. It was a horrifying moment. And certainly from a public perception, it certainly drew attention to the risk that firefighters face on a daily basis. Well, when I got back home, back to Vancouver from Ireland, everyone was struggling for what to do to help their brothers and sisters in New York. And many people were raising money and sending it down. But I knew the president of the local in New York, the Firefighters Union in New York, so I phoned him up and I said, what do you guys really need? How can we help you best at this time? And his answer was something I'll never forget. Please send people to attend the funerals that were falling, because we just don't have enough people to go to all the different funerals. So hearing that, I went back and explained it to a union meeting of my local and said, look, they're not asking for money. They say that they've got enough financial wherewithal. They're asking for people. So we were able to work through our local to get our membership, 250 of us, to send 180 of us down there to attend funerals over a 3-week period. So that's what we did. And our members jumped on board right away and said, if that's what our brothers and sisters need, that's what we're going to do. So, we were attending 5-6 funerals a day when we went back there, and it was, I'm glad we were able to do it, but it was startling to see the families and the changes in New York, and how the public in New York reacted to it was quite amazing. How they got behind their firefighters to try and support them best they could. Well, what's changed is the awareness that with most, and I wouldn't say with all yet, we've still got a ways to go, for sure. What's changed with most is now that a mental type injury is starting to be recognized as similar to a physical type injury. But the main difference is that when you have a broken arm and you come back to work, you're probably healed and you're probably able to move on with that. Whereas I would say a mental health injury is one that will stay with you and something you always have to work with for the rest of your career and for the rest of your life. You have to keep going through those tools that you've been given to deal with those issues as you keep moving through your life.
And what tools specifically were you equipped with to deal with those issues over the course of your career?
I would say I was probably one of the more fortunate ones that, I was always able to tell myself that, this is a terrible situation, no matter what it was. But I was always able to rationalize that I didn't cause this. I'm just here to try and make it better, make the situation better. So I was always able to live from that perspective, through that lens of looking at terrible situations, whereas others found it more difficult. I'm not saying that there weren't calls that didn't bother me and that still don't cause me to wake up in the middle of the night and think about, but it didn't debilitate me like it did for some of my colleagues. And that may be just some other things that were going on with their life that also got to the point of a trigger point where they couldn't deal with everything that was going on. I would say 50% is probably a good number. And you could see it, especially later in my career when I started really paying attention. You could see that people weren't acting themselves, and they were doing things that just wasn't their normal, the normal how they reacted. And we were able to pull them aside and say, "Are you sure you're doing okay? Is there something we should know that we can help you with, or can we get you some help?" But I had the good fortune of, going to a lot of conferences and with the International Association of Firefighters and learning a lot more about how firefighters are affected, how first responders are affected and can be affected. So I had the opportunity to probably have more education than most around the whole mental health piece. So hopefully I was able to bring some of that back to my department and start recognizing when my crews weren't behaving their normal way. Well, I would say that some departments' chief officers refuse to recognize the fact that mental health is a real serious issue within the fire department, and that they more would approach it from you were the wrong person, you should never get hired in this job, and that creates a whole big stigma which exasperates the problem, and then you have firefighters and employees that feel they have been abandoned by their senior officers and by the leaders, what they would consider the leaders of their department. And I would say that's still out there quite a bit. And we have a long way to go to get to where our mental health issues need to be taken and given the serious consideration that they deserve. Yes, for sure, I've ran into that quite a few times, and usually those individuals will go down a path of self-destruction by different means, whether that be alcohol, drugs, gambling, whatever the vice happens to be that they've chosen to try and escape what's inside their heads and what's really bothering them. So it's an escape route, and then once you get into addictive states, then it again just adds another layer onto the proper rehabilitation to get back to where someone can live a healthy life. Well, I think if you truly show respect for the fallen, then you will realize that prevention is really the key, and that ensuring that your workmates or your employees or your staff, whatever you want to call them, are equipped and given every opportunity to have the right tools in front of them to ensure that they can deal with all the difficult things that are put in front of them. So if you truly believe in going and respecting someone when they die, then you should take it seriously that, hey, we need to prevent this and ensure it never happens again, or else it's almost, I don't think you can ever truly prevent it, but you can certainly ensure that you do everything you can to keep it to the lowest level possible.
Are you familiar with the FLORIAN'S Motorcycle Club?
I'm not that familiar with the club. I'm familiar with some of the people who saw that as an avenue to deal with some of their issues. And knowing what I know about the mental health field is that any group that forms to deal with those types of issues needs to be formed from a very educated point of view and from a very not self-help point of view, but it needs to be formed from a professional point of view, and it needs to be formed from a holistic viewpoint rather than thinking that there's any one solution to mental health issues, because there really isn't. There's a myriad of things that work for different people and may work, but at the same time, no matter what that is, I still think professional help is needed. People who understand our culture, and even physicians and experts have to be the right experts that understand firefighting, that understand first responders and what they go through, need to be part of that overall solution. So while you may find short-term gain from that type of camaraderie, you're still going to need that professional basis to healing and to getting back to living a healthy lifestyle. Yeah, well, peer support for firefighters is a must. You must have that peer support. But that peer support must come from a healthy perspective. If you're having peer support by going to the bar and having 24 drinks in a night, that's probably not the right way to go. But peer support from a point of view is, hey, I care about you. Can you tell me if you're happy to tell me what's going on, and we can go and talk to someone who can take us to the next level of help, rather than trying to think that you as a firefighter has the tools, although you may have the empathy, but you likely don't have the tools to really assist that person in the long run.
When you look at the case of the FLORIAN'S Motorcycle Club, bunch of guys who, many of them actually do struggle with
Yep.
mental health. They're photographed front page of the newspaper with the Hells Angels.
Mm-hmm.
When you saw that article, what did you think? Because you represent the establishment here to hold law and order.
Right.
And you're also a firefighter. I'm just curious.
Well, that in that particular case, and those were when you looked into it, they were friends from elementary school who happened to run into each other, and it was an unfortunate picture in my view, and it wasn't a very well thought out picture by the person involved. However, I don't believe there was any malice intended with the picture. I think it was more of a very ill thought out picture to have taken, and certainly it wasn't very well received within the firefighting community, because it was just seen as a step too far for our community, and many felt let down by that picture.
One of the firefighter who founded the club here in Burnaby,
Mhm.
McElms, as a consequence of it, was fired from his
Mhm.
position. Was that justified?
Not knowing the whole ins and outs of it, I don't believe it was justified myself. I think, again, that was another step too far in my view. However, there may be a lot more to the story than I know. So I don't, I wasn't personally involved in the case, so I don't really know the ins and outs of it. But from just looking in, it seemed like the punishment was much greater than it should have been. I don't think so, not for me personally. I always felt that when I went on a call on a fire truck that I was always going to behave in the most professional manner and try to. So it never really was something that played on my mind. But certainly you do know now that when you're rolling a fire truck, you're likely being recorded every second. So it's something to think about, but it wasn't ever something at the top of my mind personally. Yeah, I would say so. Yeah, there were people who had those concerns, because you can take a little clip and make it look a lot different than it actually was. I don't know if that has happened so much in the fire world as it has in the police world, per se. But there is always a possibility, as you know, working with all these cameras, that you can make a little clip look totally different than the overall picture actually was. But for me personally, it never was a concern. I always had a great relationship with the police officers I work with. We shared a lot of the same, although we give each other a hard time, which is normal, just like firefighters give each other a hard time. But I always enjoyed a great relationship with police, and certainly counted on them as they counted on us on many occasions when we got into difficult situations. But I've always found the police to be a very reliable and consistent ally for firefighters. I have never seen that happen in my department, where it's gone too far. As an officer later in my career, it certainly would never have happened at any hall I was at. But I've never seen it personally in my department go too far. But I have heard of it other places, just being, and we've all heard about it, where it does go too far, and that's a shame if that happens. Well, I think what I can do from the mayor's chair is ensure that not just firefighters, but all the staff in Burnaby are ensured that they're treated with respect, and that they know that they're supported from the management side. Because I find that when employees, and especially firefighters or police, when they feel that they have been betrayed or abandoned, or someone doesn't appreciate the efforts they make, it leads to very bad situations, and it leads to behavior that can be questionable. So I think, from my position as mayor of a city or the leader of a city, is that I want to ensure that all staff within our city are treated with respect, and they know that they and they know that they will always be treated fairly and be supported when they need to be supported within their positions. So I think from a leadership perspective, that's the path that needs to be traveled when we're dealing with people in general.